Welcome to this super special episode of Health with Hashimoto's. I am so excited for you to listen in. On this episode, I interviewed a pharmacist. So a little backstory, I have had LDN the last couple winters. And when I got my prescription this winter, I had to get it from a new pharmacy. And when it came with a gorgeous packet of information along with what LDN is and how to track my symptoms. It was so well done that I reached out to the pharmacy and I was like, hey, can I interview one of your pharmacists? So you are going to hear this interview with Steve Anderson. I forgot to ask him how people can contact him or work with him. So if you are in Minnesota or Wisconsin, I do have a link and I will put that down in the show notes, how you can access his pharmacy. Another way is in our school community, skool.com is school, and we are the Health with Hashimoto's community. In there, before the interview, I asked our community, what questions do you have for the pharmacist? And so I was able to ask a lot of those questions during this interview. And Steve Anderson is going to come into our school community and he's going to do a call with us at the end of January. So if you are in our school community, you can hop on that call and you can ask him questions whether or not you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin. He is there to help us all learn about LDN, how it can benefit people with autoimmune problems, and to answer our questions. He is a pharmacist at the Apothecary. It is again in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and he is going to be serving all of us in the school community at the end of January. So come over to the school community so you can get in on that live call. All right, here is the interview. This episode is a little longer than my normal episodes because I wanted to ask him all of these questions. Enjoy the interview, and I will see you in our school community. Welcome back to Health with Hashimoto's. Today, I have a special guest. You guys are going to love this podcast episode. We have Steve Anderson, and he is a pharmacist. He is going to tell us all about LDN. If you haven't heard of that, you're going to find out what it is, how it might benefit you if you have Hashimoto's. Steve, thank you so much for being here. Let me introduce you. Steve Anderson is a pharmacist and owner of the Apothecary. It's a compounding pharmacy since 1994. Over the past 30 years, he has combined his expertise in functional and integrative medicine with advanced training in naturopathic approaches to health. The Apothecary provides personal compounded medications for individual needs and offers a wide selection of quality nutraceuticals, vitamins, and supplements. And outside of his work, Steve enjoys spending time with his wife, 4 kids, and 2 grandkids. They play a lot of sports and outdoor adventures at the lake. Thank you so much for joining us today. And can you kick us off by telling us, what is a compounding pharmacy?
Thanks for having me today. So compounding pharmacy is, we're a licensed pharmacy like others, but all pharmacies can compound. Most pharmacies probably don't do a lot of compounding, just, they, get an occasional prescription here or there. We've decided to, years back to, focus on compounding and preparing medications too. So it's preparing medications that aren't commercially made. Just to give some ideas of some things that why we get asked to compound, could be somebody's allergic to medications, they have sensitivities to things. Sometimes for children or hospice patients, they can't swallow pills anymore. So we might make a cream or a suppository or some oral suspension that they can take. We do some veterinary medication a little bit too, kind of the same principle as pediatrics, just getting lower doses of things for the pets. One of the areas, we do a lot of hormone therapies as well. So what they call bioidentical hormone therapies too, because that's very individualized dosing for the person. So whatever their capsule or cream, of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, they use, it's very individualized dosing on that too. So that is something that needs to be compounded. There's not commercially made products for this whole range of strength that people need. So things of that nature, just things that aren't commercially made and specialty items that for, very individualized patients need.
Very cool. Well, I know that when I got my most recent prescription for LDN, the pharmacist I used to use, or the pharmacy I used to use, was out of business. And so my PA looked around and found your pharmacy. And I am so impressed with the information I got. I got a full little packet with some flyers, all about LDN, a symptom tracker, a welcome letter. I was blown away. I love it. So can you tell us, what is LDN? And how could it benefit somebody with an autoimmune problem?
Okay, yeah. So LDN stands for low dose naltrexone. It's not a commercial made product, so that's why we get asked to compound it. Again, like the hormone therapies, very individualized dosing in the end, to find the right dose for the right person. But it works on the immune system. So it was like a lot of good discoveries. It was an accidental discovery. There's a higher dose of naltrexone that they use for different things. Not sure exactly how they got to this lower dose spectrum of it. I think probably part of it is the high dose causes a lot of side effects. So they use lower dosing to hopefully avoid some of that too. But it's kind of interesting within that framework, once they started using lower doses of it for that issue they use it for, people started to note, God, my pain is less, my inflammation seems better, I feel better, I have better mood, and it was, probably perplexing to the docs because they're like, well, this medication doesn't do that. So, but it was kind of over time discovery of, so they find out in the end that it has two big actions that can help for pain and inflammation, including, all autoimmune conditions. It increases the endorphin levels in the body by a large degree. And, most people think, well, endorphins, that helps for pain. And it does. But if you look into an endorphins affect our whole body, bone health, heart to degrees, it has very good brain health, mental health aspects as well. It's just uplifting and people feel better on it, which is a great aspect of it that people aren't even aware of, and nobody's unhappy about that part of it. The other side of its action, and I'm not sure exactly if it's 50-50 or what, but the other huge side it's working on the immune system side, improving that and increasing many of our body's anti-inflammatory markers that are naturally present. So in the end, endorphin increase is helpful because most autoimmune, not all of them, I guess, Hashimoto's not necessarily pain involved with it, but nonetheless, that's there. But that, it's always having anti-inflammatory action on the body from head to toe. So as far as autoimmune, we have many, many prescriptions on the Hashimoto side. That's a very common one, but really technically any autoimmune inflammatory condition is beneficial for. It doesn't really matter the diagnosis. LDN's not treating a particular diagnosis. It's just, in the end, just making the body work better. So it's helping normalize the immune system through its actions. And maybe somebody can't explain exactly the precise aspect of how it's doing that, but in the end result, it's doing all these things that's what is happening.
That's awesome. I love it when we can find things that help the body work better, like the body do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, how does it affect labs? Does it affect hormone replacement therapy? And does it affect any other supplements? Can you go over those?
Actually, I would say it's, as far as the first part, other supplements, I would say all of them are just complementary or beneficial with the low dose naltrexone. If you think about it, if it's lowering inflammation in the whole body, inflammation is just a disruptor of everything. So if you got inflammation bogging up your body, the proper signaling and path, and communication isn't done properly too. So by removing the inflammation, that's opening up all the pathways in your body that, that are necessary to get hormones, mediators, so the hormones, just even in the brain as well, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, GABA, all the brain neurotransmitters. When you have inflammation clogging out the pathways, they don't get to the receptor site. So you're clearing up the pathways to make everything work better. So so in theory, your supplements, when you take those, are going to be more beneficial then, so that the LDN is clearing up the body to make things work more efficiently, and it's going to help the supplements. As far as the labs are going, there's no labs necessary for this technically. It's, if somebody has autoimmune conditions, more than likely their providers have done different inflammatory labs, CRP, RA. I don't even know all of them, but there's numerous ones that are measuring some aspect of inflammation or autoimmune things. It's not necessary to do that on this, but their docs are doing the labs anyway. We see those coming down over time, so
Okay.
that actually with Hashimoto's, it's TPO, the thyroid antibody. So with the LDN, it has the ability, given the right dose and time, to bring labs down. So it should just have a positive impact on those labs if they're being taken. It's not going to interfere doesn't interfere with any other medications. You can take LDN, just begin it without regard to other medications other than opioid or narcotic drugs. That's the only thing it interferes with. But it'll affect labs in positive ways. You mentioned on the thyroid side and on the hormone side. In the end, if it's doing what it's doing, lowering inflammation, opening up the pathways, the body can work more efficiently in those ways. So it could improve the labs as they're on the LDN too, where because we do hormone therapies, they may have to lower their hormone dose as they get down the road because their body's just working more effectively. A lower dose will work better. We have many of those that begin on LDN have to lower their thyroid dose in the end because the inflammation's being lowered. Pathways are better. Whatever thyroid you have present in the body is going to get to the site better, more effectively, and work better. So it's not uncommon to see when the labs are done in thyroid, they might come up a little high. Not the TPO side, but the actual T3, T4, reverse T3, whatever's being checked, because the levothyroxine or armor thyroid, whatever you're taking, you don't need as much anymore, because it's working better. So that's one thing you have to watch for if you're taking LDN and on thyroid medication.
That's so interesting. So is LDN something people would have to take the rest of their life?
We go to conferences on this, and that gets asked all the time. In the audience is a lot of doctors learning about it as well too. But the response to that is, well, if somebody has some circumstance, some inflammatory injury or whatnot going on, if they're taking the LDN and maybe they take it for a year or two and they get assessed, that it's like, okay, everything's back to normal. There's no issue here whatsoever. You could go off the LDN at that point if you've addressed that circumstance. But there's a huge argument to be made to take it the rest of your life, as it's, because behind pretty much, I think it's agreed by most that most, disease states are inflammatory in process. And we just have this, just plethora of autoimmune conditions just across the country. So, and if you have this inflammatory process going on, so if you're taking something that's lowering inflammation in your body every day that you take it, in theory, that can prevent some of these if somebody is healthy, that can prevent some of these autoimmune inflammatory conditions from even, arising, to a certain state. I mean, when you're 100 years old, maybe, it's going to maybe run out of a little bit of juice then. But, because of that aspect of it too, just preventative and, to get that, say, because cardiovascular disease is inflammatory and underlying nature, which is we've known that for a long time. But also, I think a huge part of it now that we understand that some of the newer understanding of low dose naltrexone that's even arisen just the last couple of years. So it's actually gotten a little bit lower dosing level than has been traditionally understood. It's really opened up this whole positive aspect of just brain health, mental health aspect. And that's, we follow up with everyone that begins on their prescriptions here at the LDN to help, help. Most of the providers we work with will have us help guide and monitor the dosing. We don't know anybody's best doses, so you just start low and then you taper up slowly and gradually to find whatever the best individualized dose for the person is for whatever they're taking it for. But it's, the starting point dosing point has lowered over the last few years because they've understood that it has this very good mental health, brain health aspect. So people in the early stages when they first started, they just say, gosh, I just feel better. I have more energy. My mood is better. My anxiety is less. Just even brain fog and memory too. There's a lot of kind of long COVID from that. For instance, one long-term aspect of that is just brain fog. And so it's just this brain health action that is a benefit too. So again, that's kind of one of those long-term scenarios that we'd all like to be in good mood and, good memory, not feeling anxious, having good energy, is our whole life.
Right.
So there's a huge argument to be made just to stay on it your whole life. And people are choosing to just go on it just for that reason, understanding that. So a lot of the medical providers that are at the conferences that start to understand all these things, even, the young ones with no issues, they're all taking it. So
Interesting.
yeah, it is. It's really interesting.
So if somebody has any of that, long COVID, brain fog, Hashimoto's, and they decide to go on Hashimoto or on LDN, how do they know when to go up or down? Because I mean, in the ER when I was working there, it was always bigger is better. That's what people come in feeling
Yeah.
like. If it's not working, you just go big. What is it with LDN?
It's a quirky medication. There's the high dose does totally different 50 milligram tablets. They use it in treatment centers, for opioid or alcohol abuse. So again, the discovery of this low dose was accidental, and it's an entirely different medication. I mean, it doesn't even make sense at all.
Right.
What it's doing. But the literature is there. There's tons of literature out there on that explains, the details of it. The dosing to have success, what we found, you just need somebody to help guide that and at least bounce things off as you're, taking up the dose. So we just start low, from our place, we'll follow up once a month. We just tell the patients that are on, just call anytime you have any questions, anything. We're here to help to the best of our ability to find your best dose for whatever that's going to be. Try to, to slide into that range. If you get too high of a dose, you start to get some side effects. There's not much for side effects with this, but it's you as you're tapering up, trying to find that if you get to a dose, it causes some annoying side effects, if it does. So it just gives you a sign that you just have to work on tighten the dose up a little bit. But could be a headache or an upset stomach, gut, GI, gastrointestinal things. Could be nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. Could be a little tired or fatigue. It's doing a lot. It's the immune system, and it's doing a lot of internal things, changes. It's transitioning to hopefully better states and stuff. So that takes a little energy. So some people might get a little tired or fatigued in the early stages. You'll see some things on, vivid dreams. Typically, it's not like nightmares or terrors or anything like that. But it's part of that is it's people are getting a different sleep state too, so it can change their dreams. But so it's vivid. It's just, colorful dreams. Most, if somebody's dream, they don't notice much of a difference. But, a lot of people say, yeah, it's kind of actually interesting, my dreams. So it's kind of, they are colorful, and it's kind of enjoyable in a way, So that's the side effects will tell you if you're too high, hone in on the dose. But it's really important to find that best dose for a person. You can't guess, what their dose is. And,
Right.
our thought is there's really what we've seen working with thousands of those over the years on their dose too. There's really no reason in the world why it shouldn't help anybody, because it's with every dose, you're increasing the endorphins, you're helping the immune system increase all the anti-inflammatory markers. So so that's what the drug is influencing the body to do that. There's really no reason why it should, but you need to just try to find the right dose for the person. And sometimes there's a little time element involved.
Okay. And one of the people in the community, Wendy, she wanted to know what the best time is to take it. And she's read that it does cause vivid dreams like you were talking about, and that those can sometimes go away after a couple of weeks. So what would be the best time?
Yeah, that's correct. It's typically more of the side effects, these things that we mentioned before, most of the time it occurs when people first start on it. And if they're on too high of a dose, that's just, if they notice that, we just say we go lower, because it's starting to, again, affect the immune system and endorphins. And, so it's if somebody's perfectly healthy, they probably don't need to take LDN, but most people are taking it. There are issues going on too. So to get to a better state, you have to transition to that state, too. So it just stirs things up a little bit. So the sleep part, if you it's always traditionally been said to take at bedtime. And usually in the early stages, if it does cause some issues with keeping a person up or vivid dreams, it can go away. For most people, it'll go away if kind of knuckle through it and do that. If it's a little more troublesome, we just tell people to take it at supper time.
Okay.
Just take it earlier on that too. And that should alleviate in the short term. In the end, it shouldn't matter either way if you take it earlier or later. But there are some people that long term it'll affect their sleep in some way, so they just take it earlier.
Okay. But
There's
typically people take it at bedtime?
in the evening, yeah. We usually tell them just take it in the evening. Maybe
Okay.
if when they start, just to take it earlier, just to hopefully avoid that issue in the end. But now it's very common now with some of the newer understanding of its great benefits for the mental health, brain health too. So we're many of those that start on it now, most that we start with actually take it twice a day is just kind of a newer understanding of it. And the low dose in the morning at less than a milligram, half a milligram or less, that it's still increasing the endorphins and the anti-inflammatory markers in the body. But for whatever reason, there's a greater impact on mental health and brain health with that low dose in the morning and energy. So that is just within the last few years that understanding has come about, and that's what we've seen over with thousands of people over the last couple of years as that's the dosing schedule the docs have been ordering. Very good benefits on the mental health, brain health, which again, everybody's really happy about that. They weren't aware of that was even an aspect of this. And then then the evening dose is the one that ends up being adjusted up to higher levels if needed for the autoimmune disease. So the twice daily dosing, we've seen that, and it's borne out with all these patients we've worked with, is lower dose in the morning for energy, and then the higher and mood and stuff too. And most people will notice that earlier on, so they'll stay there. And then the second part is how their autoimmune issues are coming, and then the evening dose is the one that it's just, which is kind of the traditional dosing. This is the one that you go up to whatever level that person needs to hopefully start balancing out and recalibrating some of their autoimmune conditions, whatever the autoimmune is.
So if somebody has been on LDN for a while and they have that evening dose that's pretty set for them, if they added a morning dose, would they subtract that from the evening dose, or would it be above and beyond? How does that work?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think there's a black and white answer on that, but I think overall, from what we picked up at conference, that they're actually two separate doses. Well, there's overlapping activity, but the morning dose, like you were saying, is we will make adjustments on that accordingly if there's benefits needed or adjustments on the brain health, mental health side, and then the evening one will be more on the autoimmune type conditions outside of that, the brain health, mental health side of things.
I have one more question from the community, and this is from Colleen. And she says that LDN was the medication that helped her feel normal. And she's really interested in hearing more about it. On the podcast, I talk a lot about finding our root causes. She says, I tried many treatments, medications, dietary strategies for a few years, but I still struggled. My doctor finally prescribed LDN, which helped me feel normal. Did I shortchange my healing by taking LDN and not finding my root cause? I thought that was a fascinating question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll try on that too. There's just, well, there's a lot of factors that with health too. And I know with your podcast too, you talk, there's dietary issues, there's environmental issues that can create troubles as well too. So probably whatever the underlying root of the autoimmune thing is, it's got to be something on the environmental dietary side as part of the root of it. But the LDN, it's not pushing or pulling the body anywhere where it doesn't want to go. So, and this is not, I'm not a immunologist, right? I don't have the background there, but just in the conferences too. I mean, in the end, kind of the summary is LDN is helping normalize the immune system activity on that too. And But if you think about it, it's helping normalize the immune system's ability to work better and help us better and do a better job of what it's supposed to do, because you're removing the inflammation that's, one of the root causes of why we're having all these things going on is the inflammation is causing all these issues. But I mean, there's one step behind that too. It's like what's causing the inflammation, too. So, and I guess with the LDN, I guess you would say it probably doesn't matter what the particular autoimmune issue is or what it's the underlying thing is. You don't really have to identify that, because through its actions, it should be helping the body work towards, in a way, starting to help resolve that circumstance, whatever it is, just, by doing, again, the endorphin increase, the immune system's working better. So it should be helping get after that and just helping the body do a better job what it's supposed to do. I mean, is that kind of what?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, helping the body do what it's supposed to do, that's our goal. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's what she was asking then too. But it should. I know they were a little worried about using low dose naltrexone, doctors prescribing it for people with autoimmune issues that are on the biologics, typically these injections that, people take, because that, and again, they're kind of dampening, and calming down the immune system, and helping the symptoms there. And they're worried, like, LDN is because it's helping the immune system. Their idea was, well, it's stimulating the immune system, and that's not what we need with these biologics, because they would be going against each other. But, it's not stimulating the immune system. It's just, helping normalize it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for answering all these questions. And for you listeners, Steve has agreed to come to our school community and do a question and answer session over there. So make sure you are in the school community, skool.com, Health with Hashimoto's, and I will have it in the calendar once Steve and I figure out a date. It will be in January or February sometime, so that you can get your questions answered for as many as we have time for. And thank you so much again, Steve, for answering these questions and being willing to come back and do a personalized Q&A. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Please discuss any concerns and plans with your trusted healthcare professional. If you found this episode helpful, will you please share it with a friend? I'll see you next week on the Health with Hashimoto's podcast.